Good evening, everyone. Today, I want to talk about a man whose answer to a simple question may completely change the way you think about God. That man is John Lennox. For those who may not know him, John Lennox is not a preacher trying to win an argument. He is an Oxford mathematician, a scientist, an author, and someone who has spent decades speaking with atheists, skeptics, students, and intellectuals around the world. And recently, he was asked a fascinating question. How can you possibly be so certain about God when there are thousands of religions and billions of people who believe different things? Honestly, that is one of the best questions anyone can ask. Because if we're honest, we have all wondered about it at some point. How can anyone be confident? How can anyone say, I know God is real? Isn't that arrogance? Isn't that dangerous? Well, John Lennox gave an answer that I believe deserves much more attention because his answer was not emotional. It was not aggressive. It was not anti-science. It was deeply human. John Lennox immediately challenged one of the biggest assumptions of our modern world. He said something incredibly simple. He said he was certain that his wife loved him. Now, at first, some people may think this sounds like a strange comparison, but think about it for a moment. Can you prove that someone loves you? Can you place love under a microscope? Can you measure trust with a ruler? Can you put loyalty inside a laboratory? No, you cannot. And yet our entire civilization depends upon these invisible realities. This is where John Lennox begins to dismantle modern skepticism. Our society has quietly adopted a dangerous assumption. We have convinced ourselves that only scientific proof deserves our trust. But nobody actually lives that way. Every day we trust things we cannot mathematically prove. We trust our doctors. We trust our spouses. We trust our friends. We trust our children. We trust airplane pilots. We trust engineers. Trust is not the enemy of intelligence. Trust is part of being human. And this is why John Lennox is right. He is not lowering the standards of evidence. He is expanding our understanding of evidence itself. Then he says something extraordinary. He reminds us that even science does not operate with absolute certainty. This may surprise many people because we often hear people say, trust the science. But John Lennox, as a mathematician, understands something very important. Mathematics is unique. Mathematics provides a degree of certainty that most other disciplines simply cannot provide. Medicine does not work that way. Physics does not work that way. Biology does not work that way. Science constantly updates itself as new information appears. Science is a magnificent tool, but science was never designed to answer every question. Science can explain how stars form. Science can explain how our bodies function. Science can explain the chemistry of emotions, but science cannot explain why humans long for eternity. Science cannot explain why we desperately seek meaning. Science cannot explain why beauty can make us cry. Science cannot explain why injustice disturbs us so deeply. And perhaps that is because human beings are much more than biological machines. John Lennox then says something that may be his most powerful statement of all. He says, I am an evidence-based Christian. I love that phrase, an evidence-based Christian, not a blind Christian, not an irrational Christian, an evidence-based Christian. Why is that important? Because for decades, many people have repeated the same accusation. Faith means believing without evidence. John Lennox says no, faith is trust based upon evidence, and suddenly everything changes. Think about medicine. Doctors study evidence. They observe patterns. They evaluate results. They build confidence. Then they act. Faith often works exactly the same way. We examine evidence, we ask questions, we investigate, then we decide whether trust is reasonable. John Lennox is telling us that Christianity is not asking people to switch off their brains. Christianity is inviting people to use their minds fully. Then he introduces another beautiful idea. He says God is not simply a theory. God is a person. That changes everything because theories are studied. Persons are known. Imagine someone wanted to know everything about you. They scan your brain. They analyze your DNA. They measure your blood pressure. Would they truly know you? No, because facts do not automatically create relationships. People reveal themselves. Relationships require interaction. Confidence grows through familiarity. And according to John Lennox, that is exactly how God works. Christianity is not humanity climbing toward God. Christianity is God reaching toward humanity. This is one of the most revolutionary ideas in all of religion, because most people think religion is about earning acceptance. Work harder, pray harder, behave better, try harder, and maybe one day God will accept you. John Lennox says that is completely wrong. He says millions of people have rejected God because they have misunderstood God. Then he gives one of the most brilliant illustrations in the entire conversation. His marriage analogy. Imagine proposing marriage by saying this: if you obey all my rules for 40 years, I might accept you. Nobody would call that love. Nobody would accept that proposal. Nobody would even consider it reasonable. Yet millions of people think that is how God operates. They think God says, perform perfectly, and maybe I will love you. John Lennox says that is not Christianity at all. Christianity says God accepts us first. Then transformation begins. That is a radically different message. Acceptance before performance. Grace before achievement. Love before perfection. Perhaps that is why Christianity has changed millions of lives, because human beings are exhausted. We are tired of performing. We are tired of pretending. We are tired of trying to prove our worth. Deep down, every human being longs to be accepted, and John Lennox says Christianity addresses that deepest longing. Now, some skeptics may ask an important question. What about all the other religions? That is a fair question. But John Lennox never attacks other religions. Instead, he says something incredibly respectful. He recognizes that many religions contain wisdom about morality, suffering, and human behavior. But then he explains what makes Christianity different. Christianity is centered on a person, Jesus Christ. And according to John Lennox, that changes everything, because Christianity is not merely a philosophy. It is a relationship. Now, whether you agree with him or not, you have to admit something. His argument is intellectually honest. He is not asking us to abandon reason. He is asking us to expand our understanding of reality. And perhaps that is exactly what our world desperately needs, because modern society has become incredibly advanced technologically. Yet millions of people still feel empty. We have more information than ever before, yet we are more anxious than ever before. We have more entertainment than ever before, yet loneliness continues to grow. Perhaps our greatest problem is not a lack of information. Perhaps it is a lack of meaning, and that is exactly where John Lennox enters the conversation. He reminds us that humans are not merely thinking machines. We are meaning-seeking creatures. We ask questions no other species asks. Why am I here? Why do I exist? What happens after death? Why do I long for eternity? Why does my life matter? These questions refuse to disappear. And perhaps they refuse to disappear because they point toward something real, just as hunger points toward food, just as thirst points toward water. Perhaps our longing for eternity points toward an eternal reality. Now, if you are skeptical today, John Lennox would probably tell you something beautiful. Do not stop asking questions. Questions are not the enemy. Questions are often the beginning of truth. Keep searching, keep investigating, keep thinking, because faith and intelligence are not enemies. And maybe that is why John Lennox is right about faith and certainty. Certainty is not arrogance. Certainty is not pretending to know everything. Certainty is knowing whom you trust. And perhaps one day, after years of searching, you may discover what millions of people have discovered before you. God was never hiding from humanity. He was simply waiting for us to look in the right direction. Thank you for listening.